Hey, welcome to Kong's Corner. It's the show where I read Harry Potter every single day, and I've been doing so since March. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Reading Harry Potter every single day. I have not read this before, so if you're tuning in for the first time, no spoilers on the chat or Discord, and spoilers means anything from book 1 to 6 until this very sentence that I'm reading is okay, as long as it doesn't reveal anything that hasn't been revealed yet in the future, or pieces of information that you've been connecting over years, because I don't know that. The Life and Lies of Albus Dumbledore is the next chapter, chapter 18. I'm excited for this because it means we're going to find out more about Dumbledore, and Dumbledore is also always a worthy subject to get involved in. Before I start, I received a lovely card today from Elise. And it is just so nice. It actually made me tear up a little. So thank you very much for that. And also, please don't cancel your Netflix to support me on Patreon. Please don't do that. I appreciate it deeply, but I also want you to have your own Netflix and own entertainment. Because I have Netflix. I don't want you to give up yours for me. Thank you so much, Elise. That was very, very, very sweet and encouraging. I really appreciate it. Okay, so let's just get started, shall we? Let's dive into this. I'm loving this book. I'm loving where it's going. I always want to read more, but I have to wait until I can read it with you. So I just want to jump right into it. What do you think? Should just get started right away? Remember when John used to dance at the start of every episode? I wonder why he stopped. I don't know. I have some thoughts of it's just life got in the way of dancing. No, I'm gonna dance again. I'm gonna do some more things again. I'm just figuring things out as I go. I canceled Netflix because I spent more time browsing than watching. Oh, that's true. Okay, let's get started. Chapter 18, The Lives and Lives. I'm just going to see that things aren't in the way. There we go. Of Albus Dumbledore. The sun was coming up. The pure, colorless vastness of the sky stretched over him. Oh yeah, and he was just Voldemort, and Voldemort was just him. Craziness. The pure, colorless vastness of the sky stretched over him, indifferent to him and his suffering. Harry sat down in the tent entrance and took a deep breath of clean air. Simply to be alive, to watch the sun rise over the sparkling, snowy hillside, ought to have been the greatest treasure on earth, yet he could not appreciate it. His senses had been spiked by the calamity of losing his wand. He looked out over a valley blanketed in snow, distant church bells chiming through the glittering silence. Is it your best book of the series? I have to say, I think this is my favorite one. I think I haven't read the rest yet, but till now, it's pretty damn strong. Pretty damn strong. So I think this might turn out to be my favorite, but we'll see. We'll see how I like the twists and turns. Without realizing it, he was digging his fingers into his arms as if he were trying to resist physical pain. He had spilled his own blood more times than he could count. He had lost all the bones in his right arm once. This journey had already given him scars to his chest and forearm to join those on his hand and forehead, but never, until this moment, had he felt himself to be fatally weakened, vulnerable and naked, as though the best part of his magical power had been torn from him. He knew exactly what Hermione would say if he expressed any of this. The wand is only as good as the wizard, but she was wrong. His case was different. She had not felt the wand spin like the needle of a compass and shoot golden flames at his enemy. He had lost the protection of the twin cores, and only now that it was gone did he realize how much he had been counting upon it. He pulled the pieces of the broken wand out of his pocket and, without looking at them, tucked them away in Hagrid's pouch around his neck. The pouch was now too full of broken and useless objects to take any more. Harry's hand brushed the old snitch through the monk's skin, and for a moment he had to fight the temptation to pull it out and throw it away. Impenetrable, unhelpful, useless, like everything else Dumbledore had left behind. Yeah, it does suck, Mark. You're right. And his fury at Dumbledore broke over him now like lava, scorching him inside, wiping out every other feeling. Out of sheer desperation, they had talked themselves into believing that Godric's Hollow held answers, and convinced themselves that they were supposed to go back, that it was all part of some secret path laid out for them by Dumbledore. But there was no map, no plan. Dumbledore had left them to grope in the darkness, to wrestle with unknown and undreamed of terrors, alone and unaided. Nothing was explained. Nothing was given freely. They had no sword, and now Harry had no wand. And he had dropped the photograph of the thief, and it would surely be easy now for Voldemort to find out who he was. Voldemort had all the information now. Harry! Hermione looked frightened that he might curse her with her own wand. Her face streaked with tears. She crouched down beside him, 2 cups of tea trembling in her hands and something bulky under her arm. Thanks, he said, taking one of the cups. Do you mind if I talk to you? No, he said, because he did not want to hurt her feelings. Harry, you wanted to know who that man in the picture was. Well, I've got the book. Timidly, she pushed it onto his lap, a pristine copy of the Life and Lies of Albus Dumbledore. Where? How? It was in Bathilda's sitting room, just lying there. This note was sticking out of the top of it. Hermione read the few lines of spiky, acid green writing aloud. Yeah, Betty, thanks for your help. Here's a copy of the book. Hope you like it. You said everything if you don't remember it. Rita. You said everything even if you don't remember it. Oh, you said everything. Okay. I thought there was some kind of deal between the both of them. Hey, John, first time watching live. Took me weeks to get through all the videos. Keep it up. Thank you, Neman Game. Glad you're on board. Good to have you here. I think it must have arrived while the real Bathilda was alive. Bathilda was alive, but perhaps she wasn't in any fit state to read it. No, she probably wasn't. Harry looked down at Dumbledore's face and experienced a surge of savage pleasure. Wow. Now he would know all the things that Dumbledore had never thought it worth telling him, whether Dumbledore wanted him to or not. Oh, come on, man. You're reading Rita's book. It's going to be full of lies. Why would you think that? You know better. You're still really angry at me, aren't you? Said Hermione. He looked up to see fresh tears leaking out of her face, and knew that his anger must have shown in his face. No, he said quietly. No, Hermione, I know it was an accident. You were trying to get us out of there alive, and you were incredible. I'd be dead if you hadn't been there to help me. He tried to return her watery smile, then turned his attention to the book. Its spine was stiff. It had clearly never been opened before. He riffled through the pages looking for photographs. He came across the one he sought almost at once, the young Dumbledore and his handsome companion, roaring with laughter at some long-forgotten joke. Harry dropped his eyes to the caption. Albus Dumbledore, shortly after his mother's death, with his friend Gellert Grindlewald. Grindelwald? Isn't that the dude he fought? Or maybe this Gellert belongs to the family of Grindlewald. Yeah, I know nothing about this guy. Yes, thank you. Jenny's always reminding me of this. Please like the video. It helps out a lot. Thank you very much. And also, Iman. I have a good buddy in Germany, Iman. Well, he passed, unfortunately, one of my high school buddies. But I love seeing your name, Iman. Welcome in the chat. Welcome as well. He tried to return her watery smile, then turned his attention to the book. Its spine... Oh, no, sorry. Harry gaped at the last word for several long moments. Grindelwald. Grindelwald? His friend Grindlewald. He looked sideways at Hermione, who was still contemplating the name, as though she could not believe her eyes. Slowly, she looked up at Harry. Grindelwald? Ignoring the remainder of the photographs, Harry searched the pages around them for a reoccurrence of that fatal name. He soon discovered it and read greedily, but became lost. It was necessary to go further back to make sense of it all, and eventually he found himself at the start of a chapter entitled The Greater Good. Together, he and Hermione started to read. Okay, we're gonna read in Rita Skeeter's voice. How long does it go on for? This is like 6 full pages of... Oh, wait, no, wait. What? This is Gellert? Grindelwald speaking? Okay, I'm gonna start doing this in Rita's voice. I'm gonna do a little bit of it. Now approaching his 18th birthday, Dumbledore left Hogwarts in a blaze of glory. Head boy, perfect, winner of the Barnabas Finkley Prize for exceptional spellcasting. British youth representative to the Wizengamot, gold medal winner for groundbreaking contribution to the International Alchemical Conference in Cairo. Dumbledore intended next to take a grand tour with Elphius Dogbreath Doge, the Doge, the dim-witted but devoted sidekick he had picked up at school. Oh man, you're gonna need some tea after that. Criterion voice, John. Give tea? Give tea to John? I don't know what give tea means. The 2 young men were staying at the Leaky Cauldron in London, preparing to depart for Greece the following morning, when an owl arrived bearing news of Dumbledore's mother's death. Dogbreath Doge, who refused to be interviewed for this book, has given the public his own sentimental version of what happened next. He represents Kendra's death as a tragic blow, and Dumbledore's decision to give up his expedition as an act of noble self-sacrifice. Okay, I'm just gonna... So, stayed in the Leaky Cauldron following when an owl arrived bearing news of Dumbledore's mother's death. Okay, Doge has given the public his own simple version of what happened. He represents Kendra as a tragic blow. Right, okay. Certainly, Dumbledore returned to Godric's Hollow at once, supposedly to care for his younger brother and sister. But how much care did he actually give them? And in sneak, he were a head case that Aberforth says Enid Smeek, whose family lived on the outskirts of Godric's Hollow at the time. Ran wild, course, with his mum and dad gone. You'd have felt sorry for him, only he kept chucking goat dung at my head. I don't think Albus was fussed about him. I never saw them together anyway. So what was Albus doing, if not comforting his wild younger brother? The answer, it seems, is ensuring the continued imprisonment of his sister. I think this is a very different voice than I had for her before, but... the answer, it seems, is ensuring the continued imprisonment of his sister. For though her first gaoler had died, there was no change in the pitiful condition of Ariana Dumbledore. Her very existence continued to be known only to those few outsiders, like Dogbreath Doge, could be counted upon to believe in the story of ill health. Another such easily satisfied friend of the family was Bathilda Bagshot, the celebrated magical historian who has lived in Godric's Hollow for many years. Kendra, of course, has rebuffed Bathilda when she first attempted to welcome the family to the village. Several years later, however, the author sent an owl to Albus at Hogwarts, having been favourably impressed by his paper on trans-species transformation in Transfiguration Today. This initial contact led to acquaintance with the entire Dumbledore family. At the time of Kendra's death, Bathilda was the only person in Godric's Hollow who was on speaking terms with Dumbledore's mother. Unfortunately, the brilliance that Bathilda exhibited earlier in her life has now dimmed. The fire's lit, but the cauldron's empty. As Ivor Dillonsby put it to me, or in Enid Smeek's slightly earthier phrase, she's nutty as squirrel's poo. Wow. Nevertheless, a combination of tried and tested reporting techniques enabled me to extract enough nuggets of hard fact to string together the whole scandalous story. Oh yeah, I remember right now, I think I remember Rita's voice was, I like this. But I like this one better for her. I like it better. This is so mean. So mean. So mean to Bathilda. She's nutty as squirrel poo? Come on. Like the rest of the wizarding world, Bathilda puts Kendra's premature death down to backfiring charm, a story repeated by Albus and Aberforth in later years. Bathilda also parrots the family line on Ariana, calling her frail and delicate. On one subject, however, Bathilda is well worth the effort I put into procuring Veritaserum, for she, and she alone, knows the full story of the best-kept secret of Albus Dumbledore's life. Now, revealed for the first time, it calls into question everything that his admirers believed of Dumbledore. His supposed hatred of the dark arts, his opposition to the oppression of muggles, even his devotion to his own family. She used to sound like Filch before, that's true. The very same summer that Dumbledore went home to Godric's Hollow, now an orphan and head of the family, Bathilda Bagshot agreed to accept her into her home her great-nephew, Gellert Grindlewald. Okay, whoa! Gellert Grindlewald is Bathilda Bagshot's great-nephew. So they were friends, and this is the dude he fought at some point. The name of Grindlewald is justly famous. In a list of most dangerous dark wizards of all time, he would miss out on the top spot only because you know who arrived a generation later to steal his crown. As Grindelwald never extended his campaign of terror to Britain, however, the details of his rise to power are not widely known here. Educated at Durmstrang, a school famous even then for its unfortunate tolerance of the dark arts. What I get from her writing and from her speaking is that she's such an overactor. She's like, oh, this is creepy. Grindelwald showed himself quite as precociously brilliant as Dumbledore. Rather than channel his abilities into the attainment of awards and prizes, however, she's so tasty. Okay, Gellert Grindelwald. Sorry, I'm stuck. I'm stuck. Oh, I'm gonna take a drink. Here we go.
John's voice is dry. He needs to moisten his supply.
Okay. Rather than channel his abilities into the attainment of awards and prizes, however, Gellert Grindlewald devoted himself to other pursuits. At 16 years old, even Durmstrang felt he could no longer turn a blind eye to the twisted experiments of Gellert Grindelwald, and he was expelled. Hitherto, all that has been known of Grindelwald's next movements is that he travelled abroad for some months. It can now be revealed that Grindelwald chose to visit his great-aunt in Godric's Hollow, and that there, intensely shocking though it will be for many to hear it, he struck up a close friendship with none other than Albus Dumbledore. He seemed a charming boy. I like this voice so much better on her. Oh, man. I don't know why she's so funny to me. She's so dumb. Okay. She's a funny character. Just something about her over-exaggerating about just details that aren't... Everything's just so creamy. I feel that that's her slogan. Oh, that's creamy. I don't know why creamy here's the... He seemed a charming boy to me, babbles Bathilda. Whatever he became later, naturally I introduced him to poor Albus, who was missing the company of lads his own age. The boys took to each other at once. Oh, they certainly did. Bathilda... Bathilda shows me a letter kept by her that Albus Dumbledore sent Gellert Grindelwald in the dead of the night. Oh, no. Oh. Somebody's saying this. I think it's Bathilda. Yes, even after they spent all day in discussion, both such brilliant young boys, they got on like a cauldron on fire. I'd sometimes hear an owl tapping at Gellert's bedroom window, delivering a letter from Albus. An idea would have struck him, and he had to let Gellert know immediately. And what ideas they were. Profoundly shocking, though Albus Dumbledore's fans will find it. Here are the thoughts of their 17-year-old hero as relayed to his new best friend. A copy of the original letter may be seen on page 463. Gellert... Wait, so Gellert is writing this, right? Yeah. Oh, man. Okay, we whoa, there's so much left. Holy smokes. Okay, gonna keep going. This is Gellert talking now. Your point about wizard dominance being for the muggle's own good, this, I think, is the crucial point. Yes, we have been given power, and yes, that power gives us the right to rule, but it also gives us responsibilities over the ruled. We must stress this point. It will be the foundation stone upon which we build. Where we are opposed, as we surely will be, this must be the basis of all our counter-arguments. We seize control for the greater good. And from this, it follows that where we meet resistance, we must use only the force that is necessary and no more. This was your mistake at Durmstrang, but I do not complain because if you had not been expelled, we would have never met. Albus. Okay, I gotta look through this for a second. Oh, it's Albus wrote this. My bad. I'll just read it again as Albus because I need to read it again anyway. So I want to capture it as Albus and I want to hear his voice again, to be honest. Your point about, he's younger though. Your point about wizard dominance being for the Muggles' own good. This, I think, is, he's actually younger. He's not even middle-aged. How old is he when he received this? 17-year-old. He's young. Young Albus. Okay. Your point about wizard dominance. Younger. He's just 17 years old. Your point about wizard dominance being for the Muggles' own good. This, I think, is the crucial point. Yes, we have been given power, and yes, that power gives us the right to rule. But it also gives us responsibilities over the ruled. We must stress this point. It will be the foundation stone upon which we build. Where we are opposed, as we surely will be, this must be the basis of all our counter-arguments. We seize control for the greater good. And from this it follows that where we meet resistance, we must use only the force that is necessary and no more. This was your mistake at Durmstrang, but I do not complain, because if you had not been expelled, we would have never met. Albus. I miss Albus. I miss him. I really miss him. He's such a great character. Not old. This is going to become a thing. Astonished and appalled though his many admirers will be, this letter constitutes proof that Albus Dumbledore once dreamed of overthrowing the statute of secrecy and establishing wizard rule over Muggles. Okay, yeah, this is a letter from him saying, this is a version of Dumbledore, at least when he's younger, where it's about for the greater good of doing something unfortunate. Whereas now, well, at least old Dumbledore, I don't feel he is like that at all. Right? We must seize control for the greater good. And from this it follows that we were where we meet resistance. We must he's still saying only when it's necessary and no more, but he's still about control for this. Wizard dominance, control. Which is, in a way, what Voldemort is going for. And so he fought Grindelwald, right? Was that the thing? Without ruining it, only the information that was in there, he fought Grindelwald. I think that's what we know until now. So I bet there was something in there where Grindelwald probably agreed. Something happened where Grindelwald took too much power. They fought, and then Dumbledore changed his ways. He became a different person. Not a different person, but maybe his convictions changed. His beliefs changed. And now Harry's reading this, and he's just thinking, how could he not tell me these things? Well, you're never obliged to tell people everything from their lives. You know, that's a little bit unrealistic expectation from Harry. He didn't ask either. All right. What a blow for those who have always portrayed Dumbledore as the Muggle-born's greatest champion. How hollow those speeches promoting Muggle rights seem, in the light of this damning new evidence. How despicable does Albus Dumbledore appear, busy plotting his rise to power, when he should have been mourning his mother and caring for his sister. Oh, I hate Rita. No doubt those determined to keep Dumbledore on his crumbling pedestal will bleat that he did not, after all, put his plans into action, that he must have suffered a change of heart, that he came to know his senses. However, the truth seems altogether more shocking. Barely 2 months into their great new friendship, Dumbledore and Grindelwald parted. never to see each other again until they met for their legendary duel. For more, see chapter 22. What caused this abrupt rupture? Had Dumbledore come to his senses? Had he told Grindlewald he wanted no more part in his plans? Alas, no. It was poor little Ariana dying, I think, that did it, says Bathilda. It came as an awful shock. Gellert was there in the house when it happened, and he came back to my house all of a dither. Told me he wanted to go home the next day. Terribly distressed, you know. So I arranged a portkey, and that was the last I saw of him. Albus was beside himself at Ariana's death. It was so dreadful for those two brothers. They had lost everybody except each other. No wonder tempers ran a little high. Aberforth blamed Albus, you know, as people will under those dreadful circumstances. But Aberforth always talked a little madly, poor boy. All the same, breaking Albus's nose at the funeral was not dissent. It would have destroyed Kendra to see her sons fighting like that across her daughter's body. A shame Gellert could not have stayed for the funeral. He would have been a comfort to Albus, at least. Oh, what a funeral! Ugh. Albus was beside himself, and he got punched in the nose, and they fought. They didn't use their wands; they used fists at the funeral. Yeah, thank you. If there's any spoilers or anything like that, anything spoiler you want to discuss, we do have the Discord. The link is in the description. Feel free to join us there. There's also other stuff there. We have a postcard exchange. I sent mine off. I was part of it. Somebody's gonna get a postcard from me. This dreadful Cotton-side brawl, known only to those few who attended Ariana Dumbledore's funeral, raises several questions. Why, exactly, did Aberforth Dumbledore blame Albus for his sister's death? Was it, as Batty pretends, a mere effusion of grief, or could there have been some more concrete reason for his fury? Grindlewald, expelled from Durmstrang for near fatal attacks upon fellow students, fled the country hours after the girl's death, and Albus, out of shame or fear, never saw him again. Not until forced to do so by the pleas of the wizarding world. Neither Dumbledore nor Grindlewald ever seems to have referred to this brief boyhood friendship in later life. However, there can be no doubt that Dumbledore delayed for some 5 years of turmoil, fatalities, and disappearances. His attack upon Gellert Grindlewald, was it lingering affection for the man? Or fear of exposure as his once best friend that accused Dumbledore to hesitate? Was it only reluctantly that Dumbledore set out to capture the man he was once so delighted he had met? And how did the mysterious Ariana die? Was she the inadvertent victim of some dark rite? Did she stumble across something she ought not to have done as the two young men sat practicing for their attempt at glory and domination? Is it possible that Ariana Dumbledore was the first person to die for the greater good? All right. That's the end of that. A little bit of a head rush from all that. Okay, so what we actually found out with all the hyperbolizing. No, what's the word? I can't remember it. Was that Albus and Grindelwald? Hey, buddy, come here. Come on. Albus and Grindlewald were friends. They became friends after his mom's death, after Albus's mom's death. They became fast friends. They were talking about using wizard domination for the greater good of the Muggles and only using force when necessary. And that something occurred between them. They split ways right before or right after the funeral, right before the funeral, I can't remember. And that Albus fought with his brother. And then the next time they saw each other, they had one of the biggest fights in the wizarding world. So, that's what we know. Everything else is just her making stuff up, theorizing. So it's not clear whether this is the truth or not. So I'm not going to take any of that into consideration. Maybe Harry will, but I won't. The chapter ended here, and Harry looked up. Hermione had reached the bottom of the page before him. She tugged the book out of Harry's hands, looking a little alarmed by his expression, and closed it without looking at it, as though hiding something indecent. Harry, but he shook his head. Some inner certainty had crashed down inside him. It was exactly as he had felt after Ron left. He had trusted Dumbledore, believed him the embodiment of goodness and wisdom. All was ashes. How much more could he lose? Ron, Dumbledore, the Phoenix Wand. Harry, she seemed to have heard his thoughts. Listen to me. It doesn't make very nice reading. Yeah, you could say that, but don't forget, Harry. This is Rita Skeeter writing. You did read that letter to Grindlewald, didn't you? Yes, I did, she hesitated, looking upset, cradling her tea in her cold hands. I think that's the worst bit. I know Bathilda thought it was all just talk, but for the greater good became Grindelwald's slogan, his justification for all the atrocities he committed later, and from that, it looks like Dumbledore gave him the idea. They say for the greater good was even carved over the entrance to Nurmengard. What's Nurmengard? The prison Grindelwald had built to hold his opponents. He ended up in there himself, once Dumbledore had caught him. Anyway, it's an awful thought that Dumbledore's ideas helped Grindelwald rise to power. But on the other hand, even Rita can't pretend they knew each other for more than a few months, one summer, when they were both really young, and... I thought you'd say that, said Harry. He did not want to let his anger spill out at her, but it was hard to keep his voice steady. Okay, there's another crazy wizard prison? Nurmengard? A new one? Okay, it was hard to keep his voice steady. I thought you'd say, they were young. They were the same age as we are now. And here we are, risking our lives to fight the dark arts, and there he was, in a huddle with his new best friend, plotting their rise to power over the Muggles. I'm not on board with Harry on this part. People make mistakes, you idiot. People make mistakes. Did he not change? Was he not the most beautiful, wise, caring, giving, loving old man in the world? Did he not do an unimaginable amount of good things for you? And now you're criticizing for something he was when he was a kid? When he was a teenager? I get it, but no, it doesn't make sense. His temper, yeah. His temper it's pretty similar to what's happening nowadays. People going back 20 years ago to some tweet somebody wrote and saying, look, you're not allowed to do what you're doing now. Anyway, his temper would not remain in check much longer. He stood up and walked around, trying to work some of it off. I'm not trying to defend what Dumbledore wrote, said Hermione. All that right to rule rubbish. It's magic is might all over again. But Harry, his mother had just died. He was stuck alone in the house. Alone? He wasn't alone. He had his brother and sister for company. His squib sister he was keeping locked up. I don't believe it, said Hermione. She stood up too. Whatever was wrong with that girl, I don't think she was a squib. The Dumbledore we knew would never, ever have allowed. The Dumbledore we thought we knew didn't want to conquer Muggles by force, Harry shouted, his voice echoing across the empty hilltop, and several black birds rose into the air, squawking and spiraling against the pearly sky.
He changed, Harry, he changed. It's as simple as that. Maybe he did believe those things when he was 17, but the whole of the rest of his life was devoted to fighting the dark arts. Dumbledore was the one who stopped Grindlewald, the one who always voted for Muggle protection and Muggle-born rights, who fought you-know-who from the start and who died trying to bring him down.
Rita's book lay on the ground between them, so that the face of Albus Dumbledore smiled dolefully at both.
Harry, I'm sorry, but I think the real reason you're so angry is that Dumbledore never told you any of this himself. Maybe I am,
Harry bellowed, and he flung his arms over his head, hardly knowing whether he was trying to hold in his anger or protect himself from the weight of his own disillusionment.
Look what he asked from me, Hermione. Risk your life, Harry. And again, and again. And don't expect me to explain everything. Just trust me blindly. Trust that I know what I'm doing. Trust me, even though I don't trust you. Never the whole truth. Never.
His voice cracked with the strain, and they stood looking at each other in the whiteness and the emptiness, and Harry felt they were as insignificant as insects beneath that wide sky.
He loved you, Hermione whispered. I know he loved you.
Harry dropped his arms. I don't know who he loved, Hermione. It was never me. This isn't love, the mess he's left me in. He shared a damn sight more of what he was really thinking with Grindelwald than he ever shared with me. Harry picked up Hermione's wand, which he had dropped in the snow, and sat back down in the entrance of the tent. Thanks for the tea. I'll finish the watch. You get back in the warm. She hesitated, but recognized the dismissal. She picked up the book and then walked back past him into the tent. But as she did so, she brushed the top of his head lightly with her hand. Oh. He closed his eyes at her touch and hated himself for wishing what she said was true, that Dumbledore had really cared. Oh, gosh. Wow. Truly, Harry is almost at 0. He still has Hermione. Hermione is one shining light in this. Everything else is gone. Not only externally, materially, in terms of people and so on, but also emotionally and what he holds on to. Where did Dexter go? Oh, he's back there. But also in terms of what he's holding on to. And just worth and value of himself, of Dumbledore, the one he was, the father figure of his life. And that little brush from the top of the head. What a beautiful gesture from Hermione. A really beautiful gesture. Chapter 19, The Silver Doe. What are Hermione's flaws? What are her flaws? Other than maybe not knowing when she's giving too much information for people to really connect with what she's saying. That might be a flaw. That's sometimes a flaw of hyper-intellectuals, is that they have so much information that they're giving that they don't get when it really connects with people. And so they just keep on talking and they lose people. But other than that, I'm trying to think of Hermione's flaws, and I'm really coming up short. I'm coming up short with flaws for Hermione. She's a bit judgy. That's true, Camilla. Yeah, she's a bit judgy, a bit overbearing. Okay, yeah. But, yeah, yes, those are true. Yeah. She expects people to be perfect sometimes. Hey, you're all naming very true things. Those are some flaws of her. Bit judgy, bit overbearing. Yeah, that's true. The Silver Doe. It was snowing by the time Hermione took over the watch at midnight. Harry's dreams were confused and disturbing. Nagini wove in and out of them, first through a gigantic cracked ring, then through a wreath of Christmas roses. He woke repeatedly, panicky, convinced that somebody had called out to him in the distance. Imagining that the wind whipping around the tent was footsteps or voices. Finally, he got up in the darkness and joined Hermione, who was huddled in the entrance to the tent reading A History of Magic by the light of her wand. The snow was still falling thickly, and she greeted with relief his suggestion of packing up early and moving on.
We'll go somewhere more sheltered,
she agreed, shivering as she pulled on a sweatshirt over her pajamas.
I kept thinking I could hear people moving outside. I even thought I saw somebody once or twice.
Harry paused in the act of pulling on a jumper and glanced at the silent, motionless sneakoscope on his table. 1 second. Silver doe. What's his dad's Patronus again? Isn't his dad's Patronus like a deer or something like that? Or a stag? It's a stag? Isn't his dad's Patronus something? Something like that? A deer? A doe? A stag. Okay, it's not a doe. All right. I thought it was related. Harry paused in the act of pulling on a jumper and glanced at the silent, motionless sneakoscope on the table.
I'm sure I imagined it, said Hermione, looking nervous. The snow in the dark. It plays tricks on your eyes. But perhaps we ought to disapparate under the invisibility cloak, just in case.
Half an hour later, with the tent packed, Harry wearing the Horcrux and Hermione clutching the beaded bag, they disapparated. I can't believe Ron is gone. This is so weird. The usual tightness engulfed them. Harry's feet parted company with the snowy ground and slammed hard onto what felt like frozen earth covered with leaves. Where are we? He asked, peering around at a fresh mass of trees as Hermione opened the beaded bag and began tugging out tent poles.
The Forest of Dean, she said. I came camping here once with my mum and dad.
Here, too, snow lay on the trees all around, and it was bitterly cold. But they were at least protected from the wind. They spent most of the day inside the tent, huddled for warmth around the useful bright blue flames that Hermione was so adept at producing, and which could be scooped up and carried around in a jar. Cool. That's cool. Harry felt as though he was recuperating from some brief but severe illness, an impression reinforced by Hermione's solicitousness. That afternoon, fresh flakes drifted down upon them, so that even their sheltered clearing had a fresh dusting of powdery snow. After 2 nights of little sleep, Harry's senses seemed more alert than usual. Their escape from Godric's Hollow had been so narrow that Voldemort seemed somehow closer than before, more threatening. As darkness drew in again, Harry refused Hermione's offer to keep watch and told her to go to bed. Hainia? I don't know what Hainia means. What does a doe sound like? Harry moved an old cushion into the tent's mouth and sat down, wearing all the sweaters he owned, but even so still shivery. The darkness deepened with the passing hours until it was virtually impenetrable. He was on the point of taking out the Marauder's map so as to watch Ginny's dot for a while before... Oh man, buddy. Before he remembered that it was the Christmas holidays and that she would be back at the Burrow. Every tiny movement seemed magnified in the vastness of the forest. Harry knew that it must be full of living creatures, but he wished they would all remain still and silent, so that he could separate their innocent scurrying and prowlings from noises that might proclaim other sinister movements. He remembered the sound of a cloak slithering over dead leaves many years ago, and at once thought he heard it again, before mentally shaking himself. Their protective enchantments had worked for weeks. Why should they break now? And yet he could not throw off the feeling that something was different tonight. Several times he jerked upright, his neck aching because he had fallen asleep. Slumped. Should I change the music? Creepy times? His neck aching because he had fallen asleep, slumped at an awkward angle against the side of the tent. The night reached such a depth of velvety blackness that he might have been suspended in limbo between disapparition and apparition. He just held up a hand in front of his face to see whether he could make out his fingers when it happened. A bright silver light appeared right ahead of him, moving through the trees. Whatever the source, it was moving soundlessly. The light seemed simply to drift towards him. He jumped to his feet, his voice frozen in his throat, and raised Hermione's wand. He screwed up his eyes as the light became blinding, the trees in front of it pitch black in silhouette, and still the thing came closer. And then the source of the light stepped out from behind an oak. It was a silver-white doe, moon-bright and dazzling, picking her way over the ground, still silent, and leaving no hoof-prints in the fine powdering of snow. She stepped towards him, her beautiful head with its wide, long-lashed eyes held high. Harry stared at the creature, filled with wonder, not at her strangeness, but at her inexplicable familiarity. He felt that he had been waiting for her to come, but that he had forgotten, until this moment that they had arranged to meet. His impulse to shout for Hermione, which had been so strong a moment ago, had gone. He knew he would have staked his life on it, that she had come for him, and him alone. What is going on? Wow. Yeah, I mean, if his dad's Patronus is a stag, I'm guessing this is his mom's. That's my guess. They gazed at each other for several long moments, and then she turned and walked away. "No," he said, and his voice was cracked with lack of use. "Come back!" She continued to step deliberately through the trees, and soon her brightness was striped by their thick black trunks. For one trembling second, he hesitated. Caution murmured. It could be a trick, a lure, a trap. But instinct, overwhelming instinct, told him that this was not dark magic. He set off in pursuit. Snow crunched beneath his feet, but the doe made no noise as she passed through the trees, for she was nothing but light. Deeper and deeper into the forest she led him, and Harry walked quickly, sure that when she stopped, she would allow him to approach her properly, and then she would speak, and the voice would tell him what he needed to know. At last, she came to a halt. She turned her beautiful head towards him once more, and he broke into a run, a question burning in him. But as he opened his lips to ask it, she vanished. Though the darkness had swallowed her whole, her burnished image was still imprinted on his retinas. It obscured his vision, brightening when he lowered his eyelids, disorientating him. Now fear came. Her presence had meant safety. "Lumos!" he whispered, and the wand tip ignited. The imprint of the doe faded away with every blink of his eyes as he stood there, listening to the sounds of the forest, to distant crackles of twigs, soft swishes of snow. Was he about to be attacked? Had she enticed him into an ambush? Was he imagining that somebody stood beyond the reach of the wand light, watching him? He held the wand higher. Nobody ran out at him. No flash of green light burst from behind a tree. Why, then, had she led him to the spot? Something gleamed in the light of the wand, and Harry spun about. But all that was there was a small, frozen pool, its cracked, black surface glittering as he raised the wand higher to examine it. He moved forwards rather cautiously and looked down. The ice reflected his distorted shadow, and the beam of wand light, but deep below the thick, misty gray carapace, something else glinted, a great silver cross. His heart skipped into his mouth. He dropped to his knees at the pool's edge and angled the wand as to flood the bottom of the pool with as much light as possible, a glint of deep red. It was a sword with glittering rubies in its hilt. The sword of Gryffindor was lying at the bottom of the forest pool. "Excuse me?" A deer? A doe? A female deer? Led him to a sword in the middle of the forest in a pool? Here you go, Harry. Here's the thing you've searched for Eterni. Here it is. Here it lies. Bye-bye. I shall tell you no more, but I am the Deus Ex Machina. Oh, come on. What? It's his mom helping him out, but what, is this randomly there? All right, let's keep going. Hopefully this is explained, huh? Barely breathing, he stared down at it. How was this possible? How could it have come to be lying in a forest pool, this close to the place where they were camping? Had some unknown magic drawn Hermione to this spot, or was the doe which had taken to be a Patronus some kind of guardian of the pool? Or had the sword been put into the pool after they had arrived, precisely because they were here? In which case, where was the person who had wanted to pass it to Harry? Again, he directed the wand at the surrounding trees and bushes, searching for a human outline, for the glint of an eye, but he could not see anyone there. All the same, a little more fear leavened his exhilaration as he returned his attention to the sword reposing upon the bottom of the frozen pool. Reposing. He pointed the wand at the silvery shape and murmured, "Accio sword." It did not stir. He had not expected it to. If it had been that easy, the sword would have lain on the ground for him to pick up, not in the depths of a frozen pool. They got the tool they need to destroy Horcruxes. He set off around the circle of ice, thinking hard about the last time the sword had delivered itself to him. He had been in terrible danger then, and had asked for help. "Help," he murmured, but the sword remained upon the pool bottom, indifferent, motionless. What was it, Harry asked himself, walking again, that Dumbledore had told him the last time he had retrieved the sword?
Only a true Gryffindor could have pulled that out of the hat.
And where were the qualities that defined a Gryffindor? A small voice inside Harry's head answered him.
Their daring, nerve, and chivalry set Gryffindors apart.
Harry stopped walking and let out a long sigh, his smoky breath dispersing rapidly upon the frozen air. He knew what he had to do. If he was honest with himself, he had thought it might come to this from the moment he had spotted the sword through the ice. Please go long. Please go long. Yeah, somebody else is saying that. I will see. I might get called to dinner, but I will see. Hope I will go a bit longer. Where are we? He glanced around at the surrounding trees again, but was convinced now that nobody was going to attack him. They had had their chance as he walked alone through the forest, had plenty of opportunity as he examined the pool. The only reason to delay at this point was because the immediate prospect was so deeply uninviting. With fumbling fingers, Harry started to remove his many layers of clothing. Where chivalry entered into this, he thought ruefully, he was not entirely sure, unless it counted as chivalrous, that he was not calling for Hermione to do it in his stead. An owl hooted somewhere as he stripped off. Ooh! 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 And he thought with a pang of Hedwig. I kind of ruined that moment. He was shivering now, his teeth chattering horribly. I totally forgot that Hedwig died too. What a bummer. What a bummer. Yeah, my housemates love to cook. And so I'm one of the group that does the cleaning of the house and the kitchen, all that kind of stuff. And they're the gang that likes to cook in the day. It's pretty awesome. It's pretty awesome. He placed the pouch containing his wand, his mother's letter, the shard of Sirius's mirror, and the old snitch on top of his clothes. Then he pointed Hermione's wand at the ice. Diffindo! It cracked with a sound like a bullet in the silence. The surface of the pool broke, and chunks of dark ice rocked on the ruffled water. As far as Harry could judge, it was not deep, but to retrieve the sword he would have to submerge himself completely. Contemplating the task ahead would not make it easier, or the water warmer. He stepped to the pool's edge and placed Hermione's wand on the ground, still lit. Then, trying not to imagine how much colder he was about to become or how violently he would soon be shivering, he jumped. Wow. Every pore of his body screamed in protest. The very air in his lungs seemed to freeze solid as he was submerged to his shoulder in the frozen water. He could hardly breathe. Trembling so violently that the water lapped over the edges of the pool, he felt for the blade with his numb feet. He only wanted to dive once. Harry put off the moment of total submersion from second to second, gasping and shaking, until he told himself that it must be done, gathered all his courage, and dived. Wow. The cold was agony. It attacked him like fire. His brain itself seemed to have frozen as he pushed through the dark water to the bottom and reached out, groping for the sword. His fingers closed around the hilt. He pulled it upwards. Then something closed tight around his neck. He thought of water weeds, though nothing had brushed him as he dived, and raised his empty hand to free himself. It was not weed. The chain of the Horcrux had tightened and was slowly constricting his windpipe. You get out of here with that! Get out of here with that crap! Stop it! Stop being underwater being choked by a chain, please! Stop being choked underwater by a chain! Harry kicked out wildly, trying to push himself back to the surface, but merely propelled himself into the rocky side of the pool. Thrashing, suffocating, he scrabbled at the strangling chain, his frozen fingers unable to loosen it, and now little lights were popping inside his head, and he was going to drown. There was nothing left, nothing he could do, and the arms that closed around his chest were surely death's. Choking and retching, soaking and colder than he had ever been in his life, he came to, face down in the snow. Somewhere close by, another person was panting and coughing and staggering around. Hermione had come again, as she had come when the snake attacked, yet it did not sound like her, not with those deep coughs, not judging by the weight of the footsteps. Harry had no... This music's a bit too much. Okay, it's ending. Maybe if the song keeps going like this, I'm going to change it. Harry had no strength to lift his head and see his savior's identity. All he could do was raise a shaking hand to his throat and feel the place where the locket had cut tightly into his flesh. It was gone. Somebody had cut him free. Then the panting voice spoke from his head. "Are you mental?" Ron! Ron's back! Ron's back! You mental? Ron! Nothing but the shock of hearing that voice could have given Harry the strength to get up. Shivering violently, he staggered to his feet. There before him stood Ron. Fully dressed but drenched to the skin, his hair plastered to his face, the sword of Gryffindor in one hand and the Horcrux dangling from its broken chain in the other. How the hell did he find them? Why the hell? Panted Ron, holding up the Horcrux, which swung backwards and forwards on his shortened chain in some parody of hypnosis. Didn't you take this thing off before you dived? Harry could not answer. The silver doe was nothing compared with Ron's reappearance. He could not believe it. Shuddering with cold, he caught up the pile of clothes still lying at the water's edge and began to pull them on. As he dragged sweater after sweater over his head, Harry stared at Ron, half expecting him to have disappeared every time he lost sight of him. And yet he had to be real. He had just dived into the pool. He had saved Harry's life. "It was you?" Harry said at last, his teeth chattering, his voice weaker than usual due to his near strangulation. "Well, yeah," said Ron, looking slightly confused. You cast that do?" "What? No, of course not. I thought it was you doing it." "My Patronus is a stag." "Oh, yeah. I thought it would look different. No antlers." Harry put Hagrid's pouch, so it led him there too? Harry put Hagrid's pouch back around his neck, pulled on a final sweater, stooped to pick up Hermione's wand, and faced Ron again. How come you're here? Apparently Ron had hoped that this point would come up later, if at all. Well, I've, come back, if he cleared his throat. You still want me. There was a pause, in which the subject of Ron's departure seemed to rise like a wall between them. Yet it was here. He had returned. He had just saved Harry's life. Ron looked down at his hands. He seemed momentarily surprised to see the things he was holding. Oh, yeah, I got it out, he said rather unnecessarily, holding up the sword for Harry's inspection. That's why you jumped in, right? Yeah, said Harry, but I don't understand. How did you get here? How did you find us? Long story, said Ron. I've been looking for you for hours. It's a big forest, isn't it? And I was just thinking I'd have to kip under a tree and wait for morning when I saw that deer coming and you following. You didn't see anyone else? No, said Ron. But he hesitated, glancing at two trees growing close together some yards away. I did think I saw something move over there, but I was running to the pool at the time because you'd gone in and you hadn't come up. So I wasn't going to make a detour to... Hey! Harry was already hurrying to the place Ron had indicated. The two oaks grew close together. There was a gap of only a few inches between the trunks at eye level, an ideal place to see, but not be seen. The ground around the roots, however, was free of snow, and Harry could see no sign of footprints. He walked back to where Ron was standing, still holding the sword and the Horcrux. Anything there? Ron asked. No, said Harry. So, how did the sword get in that pool? Whoever cast that Patronus must have put it there. They both looked at the ornate silver sword, its ruby's hilt glinting a little in the light from Hermione's wand. You reckon this is the real one? Asked Ron. One way to find out, isn't there? Said Harry. The Horcrux was still swinging from Ron's hand. The locket was twitching slightly. Harry knew that the thing inside it was agitated again. It had sensed the presence of the sword and had tried to kill Harry rather than let him possess it. Now was not the time for long discussions. Now was the time to destroy the locket once and for all. Yikes! Harry looked around, holding Hermione's wand high, and saw the place, a flattish rock lying in the shadow of a sycamore tree. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go to destroy this, or at least try to destroy this Horcrux. Watch your arm, Harry. Watch your arm. You don't want to become like Dumbledore with his arm. Come here, he said, and he led the way, brushed snow from the rock's surface, and held out his hand for the Horcrux. When Ron offered the sword, however, Harry shook his head. No, you should do it. Me? Said Ron, looking shocked. Why? Because you got the sword out of the pool. I think it's supposed to be you. He was not being kind or generous. As certainly as he had known that the doe was benign, he knew that Ron had to be the one to wield the sword. Dumbledore had at least taught Harry something about certain kinds of magic, of the incalculable power of certain acts. I'm going to open it, said Harry, and you stab it straight away, okay? Because whatever's in there will put up a fight. The bit of riddle in the diary tried to kill me. How are you going to open it? Asked Ron. He looked terrified. I'm going to ask it to open, using parcel tongue, said Harry. Wow. The answer came so readily to his lips that he thought that he'd always known it. Deep down. Perhaps it had taken his recent encounter with Nagini to make him realize it. He looked at the serpentine S, inlaid with glittering green stones. It was easy to visualize it as a minuscule snake, curled upon the cold rock. No, said Ron. No, don't open it. I'm serious. Why not? Asked Harry. Let's get rid of the damn thing. It's been months. I can't, Harry. I'm serious. You do it. But why? Because that thing's bad for me, said Ron, backing away from the locket on the rock. I can't handle it. I'm not making excuses, Harry. For what I was like. For what it was like.
but it affects me worse than it affected you and Hermione. It made me think stuff I was thinking anyway, but it made everything worse. I can't explain it. And then I take it off, and I get my head on straight again, and then I have to put the effing thing back on. I can't do it, Harry. He had backed away, the sword dragging at his side, shaking his head. You can do it, said Harry. You can. You've just got the sword. I know it's supposed to be you who uses it. Please, just get rid of it, Ron. The sound of his name seemed to act like a stimulant. Ron swallowed, then still breathing hard through his long nose, moved back towards the rock. Tell me when, he croaked. On 3, said Harry, looking back down at the locket and narrowing his eyes. Concentrating on the letter S, imagining a serpent while the contents of the locket rattled like a trapped cockroach. It would have been easy to pity it, except the cut around Harry's neck still burned. 1, 2, 3. Open! The last word came as a hiss and a snarl, and the golden doors of the locket swung wide with a little click. Behind both of the glass windows within blinked a living eye, dark and handsome as Tom Riddle's eyes had been before he turned them scarlet and slit-pupilled. Stab! Said Harry, holding the locket steady on the rock. Ron raised the sword in his shaking hands. The point dangled over the frantically swiveling eyes, and Harry gripped the locket tightly, bracing himself, already imagining blood pouring from the empty windows. Then a voice hissed from out of the Horcrux. I have seen your heart, and it is mine. Don't listen to it, Harry said harshly. Stab it! I have seen your dreams, Ronald Weasley, and I have seen your fears. All you desire is possible, but all that you dread is also possible. Stab! Shouted Harry. His voice echoed from the surrounding trees. The sword point trembled, and Ron gazed down into Riddle's eyes. Least loved always by the mother who craved a daughter. Least loved now by the girl who prefers your friend. Second best always, eternally overshadowed. Ron, stab it now! Harry bellowed. He could feel the locket quivering in his grip and was scared of what was coming. Ron raised the sword still higher, and as he did so, Riddle's eyes gleamed scarlet. Out of the locket, 2 windows. Out of the eyes, there bloomed like 2 grotesque baubles, the heads of Harry and Hermione, weirdly distorted. Ron yelled in shock and backed away as the figures blossomed out of the locket, first chests, then waists, then legs, until they stood in the locket side by side like trees with a common root, swaying over Ron and the real Harry, who had snatched his fingers away from the locket as it burned suddenly white-hot. Run! He shouted. But the Riddle Harry was now speaking with Voldemort's voice, and Ron was gazing, mesmerized in its face. This is intense. Wow. Why return? We were better without you, happier without you, glad of your absence. We laughed at your stupidity, your cowardice, your presumption. These are the voices of Harry and her. Presumption, echoed the Riddle Hermione, who was more beautiful and yet more terrible than the real Hermione. She swayed, cackling before Ron, who looked horrified, yet transfixed, a sword hanging pointlessly at his side. Who could look at you? Who would ever look at you besides Harry Potter? What have you ever done compared with the Chosen One? What are you compared to the boy who lived? Ron, stab it, Harry yelled. But Ron did not move. His eyes were wide, and the Riddle Harry and the Riddle Hermione were reflected in them.
their hair swirling like flames, their eyes shining red, their voices lifted in an evil duet.
Your mother confessed,
Sneered Riddle Harry, while Riddle Hermione jeered.
that she would have preferred me as a son, would be glad to exchange. Who wouldn't prefer him? What woman would take you? You are nothing, nothing, nothing to him,
crooned Riddle Hermione, and she stretched like a snake and entwined herself around Riddle Harry, wrapping him in a close embrace. Their lips met. Whoa-wee. Oh no. Oh, this is bad news bears for Ron. On the ground in front of them, Ron's face filled with anguish. He raised the sword high, his arm shaking. "Do it, Ron!" Harry yelled. Ron looked towards him, and Harry thought he saw a trace of scarlet in his eyes. Oh, geez. Ron? The sword flashed, plunged. Harry threw himself out of the way. There was a clang of metal and a long, drawn-out scream. Harry whirled round, slipping in the snow, wand held ready to defend himself. But there was nothing to fight. The monstrous versions of himself and Hermione were gone. There was only Ron, standing there with the sword held slackly in his hand, looking down at the shattered remains of the locket and the flat rock. He did it. He did it. Slowly, Harry walked back to him, hardly knowing what to do or say. Ron was breathing heavily. His eyes were no longer red at all, but their normal blue. They were also wet. Okay, so this chapter goes on for a while. I'm going to end there. This is a good point to end, because they just smashed the Horcrux, and I gotta go downstairs. Crazy stuff. Crazy stuff. This was pretty great. Wow. That was this mistake on Voldemort's part, making Harry and Hermione kiss. It just made him angrier. It made him want to destroy something. Crazy that they kissed. I wonder if this is going to flare up in Ron's jealousness, like some suspicion. Ron destroyed a Horcrux, and it did nothing to his arm. Which is interesting. Oh, wow. So much action in this book. So many things happened. Great scene reading. Dinner time. Thank you, Tasha. This is an okay point to end, yes. Thank you, John. Thank you all. Who sent the dough? Who is there? Who sent the dough? Who sent that damn dough? I'm trying to think. I don't know. I don't know. Who sent the dough? I don't know. All right, y'all. I will be back tomorrow. Tomorrow at 6 p.m. once again. Enjoy yourselves this evening. Hey, you know, I have some like today. I was anxious. I had an anxious day. You know, we got locked down here. Same day every day. Some days are good. Some days are not. Today I was anxious. These readings help me as well. I'm really happy that we have this. So thank you for logging on. Thank you for taking part in this, and I can't wait to see you tomorrow. Bye bye. Have a good day.